Ayun. How about this one? Meron ba rin? Okay, then I don't have any choice but to... Yeah. May static. There you go. How about this one? There. Is this better? Okay na. Alright. Alright, let's start over. Today we're going to discuss about treason and inciting to sedition. And we will include in this Article 154, which is unlawful publication. So why are we doing that? Well, very recently, Senator Trillanes went to the U.S. and he met with some senators in the U.S. According to some of these senators are known for supposedly, allegedly toppling regimes. And that is something certainly for us to be concerned about. Okay. In the meantime, one of the questions that I keep getting, parati ko naririnig, parating nasa sa wall ko na hindi ko na rin sinasagot, ay ano bang pwedeng ikaso dito kay Trillanes? Okay, first of all, let's explain something. Good evening to everybody. I want to explain something. We do not file cases against people just because we don't like them. Okay, that's not how it works, and that's not how we're going to do this. And even the president has told us he is not going to do that. In fact, for the longest time, mahaba ang pasensya niya. Remember, before Senator De Lima was charged with anything, the president just kept saying, it's all right, you can let her talk. Okay? The same holds true with any other public figure. The same holds true with everybody else. Why? Because the president and our laws, the president is a lawyer and he is aware that one of the most important freedoms that we have is the freedom of speech. Okay? And that speech includes the kind of speech that you do not want to hear. It includes the kind of speech that you disagree with. The freedom of speech even covers, people lying. Why? Because literature is essentially lying, diba? We need to be free to speak our minds. Now, there are exceptions to that. The freedom of speech comes with limitations. And these limitations are very specifically stated in the law. But, as we have said earlier, even the president says this, you do not try to fix a political problem by filing cases against your enemies. You do not take revenge on somebody just because you don't like him, just because he disagrees with your politics. We file cases because that person has violated the law. Okay? For no other reason. You might feel happy when certain people go to jail. I certainly felt relieved when Senator De Lima went to jail. And of course, Thinking Pinoy said, masaya kaming nakakulong siya, which expressed a lot of our sentiments. But that is not the reason why why cases are filed. Okay, we don't file just because you don't like somebody's face or you don't like somebody's speech. Okay, the lack of liking the speech is not a reason to file a case. Please remember this because the president himself also says this. No matter how high your passions rise, no matter how angry we can be about somebody else, freedom of speech is something to respect. Okay, however, as I mentioned, there are limitations to the freedom of speech. One is libel. If you make a malicious imputation of a crime, vice, or defect, that is libel, and therefore, you can be sued. And in fact, under Republic Act 10951, the penalties for libel have been increased. Okay? We'll not talk yet about CIA and all of that because we want to talk about hard facts here. Okay? You know why? Because you cannot take to court a rumor. You cannot take to court innuendo, and you cannot take to court your conspiracy theories. Now, you have to be patient with me because we're going to deal with things that we can actually file hard facts. Okay? For the moment, I understand that you're angry, and I understand that there's so many things to think about. But let's deal only first with the hard facts. before we do that, go ahead and please start sharing so that we don't have to keep repeating and we can answer a lot more questions. Okay? Sige. So, number one, a lot of people, a lot of you are always mentioning the word treason. Now, isn't what Trillanes did treason? Isn't that, everybody keeps using the word treason. However, treason is very specific in the law. Okay? And one of the most important things about treason is this, that it happens only during wartime. Okay? Why is that? Because first, how do you define treason? In the revised penal code, it says, any person owing allegiance to the Philippine, well, it's the original wording is the government of the Philippine Islands. Not being a foreigner, although a foreigner can commit treason if there is loyalty. We'll discuss that later. Not being a foreigner, levies war against them, which means this government levies war against the Philippines, or adheres to its enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the Philippine Islands or elsewhere, shall be punished by. Okay. So what does this mean? It means, first, Philippine citizens or any person who owes allegiance to the Philippines. Levies war, wages war. Ibig sabihin, you join with the enemies of the Philippines. So during World War II, those who sided with the Japanese are considered to have committed treason. Okay? So, when there is no war, there is no enemy, so to speak, the kind of enemy that is considered in the crime of treason. Kumbaga, what is being punished here are the traitorous acts. You can't be a traitor, according to the Supreme Court, unless there is war. Although you can commit acts that are deemed treasonous or traitorous unless there is war. And war is very specific. Normally in this country, it will take an act of Congress to declare a war. So you can't use the war on drugs. Okay? The conflict in Marawi was an act of terrorism. It is not done by a foreign state. Even if ISIS claims to be a foreign state, this is terrorism. Okay? So that's not a war. Right? So there is no treason here. There is no treason today. Okay. However, dami nang nagalit, no? When I mentioned that treason can only happen during wartime. And so all of your, suddenly I was getting a lot of people really impatient with me saying, hindi, iba naman kasi yung definition nyo. Excuse me, the definition that I'm using is the revised penal code, which means you can't accuse a person of treason then use a Webster's dictionary. You'll have to use what is written in the law in order to use the law against this person. Diba? So, hindi kayo magagalit sa akin when I say things that you don't like because, diba, yun yung freedom of speech, even the ideas that you don't agree with. However, in this case, what I'm giving you is a fact. You cannot punish a treasonous act because we're not at war. Okay? No, the conflict in Marawi is not a war. Okay? A war is between two states and it is declared by Congress. Please do not ask about espionage. Okay, that's fine. Sige, let's discuss espionage. Espionage is, and this is how it's defined in the law, okay? Any person who, without authority, enters a warship, a fort, naval or military establishment or reservation to obtain information, plans, photographs, or other data of a confidential nature relative to the defense of the Philippine archipelago. Okay, does this sound familiar? Do you know anybody who did this? No. So remember, this person enters usually into a military facility. And the purpose of entering that military facility is to obtain plans, photographs, or anything of a confidential nature that could leave the Philippine government's defense, the defense of this country, vulnerable. Okay? That's not. The second definition of espionage is any person who is in possession by reason of his public office, etc., of articles, data, or information pertaining to the defense of the country, and then he discloses it to a representative of a foreign nation. Okay? Wala pa rin. Alright? So that's the definition of espionage. It always relates to information pertaining to the defense of the country. Okay? If it is just, and normally here, yung defense nga is of a military nature. Okay? Some people are asking, di ba outdated ang definition ng treason? Even if it is outdated, if there is no new law replacing it, then you cannot punish a person for committing treason because you have to go by the definition that is in our law. In order to update that, you will require another law. Okay? Huwag kayong magagalit. I understand that you're angry at Sunny Trillanes, and you know that's you and millions of other people, but we do not randomly put people in jail because we feel that he committed treason. He has to have committed an act that is punishable by law. Okay? Anna Wayne says, hindi ba yung lolo ni Noy Noy was yes, that is true. Benigno Aquino Sr. was a collaborator. So yes, agree with that. That was an act of treason. Okay? However, hindi ko sinabi na everybody keeps asking me, ano bang pwedeng ikaso kay Sunny, kay Trillanes, and all of that. Again, I will warn you, we don't file cases against people we hate just because we hate them. We only file cases against people, even the ones that we like, if they violate the law. Okay? So, we looked at what we noticed during the course of watching our political landscape, no? Dun pa lang, when we were filing the case against Leni Robredo for impeachment, one of the things that we noticed is that she was making statements that was detrimental to the country. Now, there are two laws here that she could have possibly violated, but remember, she's immune. That's why impeachment, diba? She has some kind of immunity. She cannot be removed from office by filing a criminal case against her. She can only be removed from office for impeachment. Now, that speech that she made at the UN before pertained to supposed extrajudicial killings, etc. And if it led to, let's say, some of the countries withdrawing trade agreements with us or treating our OFWs badly, etc., then now it will fall under two possible crimes. One is inciting to sedition, and the other is unlawful publications. Now, in the previous lives, I've already discussed Article 154, which is unlawful publication. Unlawful publication, if you will remember, is false news that is published, and publication here can mean, broadcast and all of that. And it affects the national interest, national security, and possibly public order. Okay? Publications yan. So, now the other that could possibly have been committed is inciting to sedition. But in order to know what inciting to sedition is, you have to know what sedition is. Diba? Sedition is the following: committed by a person who publicly and tumultuously, magulo in tumultuously, in order to attain by force or intimidation or other means outside of legal methods. And difference in sedition from rebellion is rebellion, you're taking up arms. In sedition, illegal means pero walang taking up arms. So rise publicly, tumultuously, attained by force and intimidation. These are the acts that you use force or intimidation to prevent the promulgation or execution of any law or the holding of elections. 2, to prevent the national government or local government, municipal governments, or any public officer from freely exercising his functions. So you're preventing an officer from doing what he's supposed to do. Like you, diba? 3, or to prevent pala the execution of any administrative order. Okay? Number 3, to inflict any act of hate or revenge upon the person or property of any public officer or employee. Remember, this is not something you say. You inflict an act of hate or revenge. Okay? So, and that can mean, even if it's not a physical injury or if it's not, something so completely violent, but it is an act of hate or an act of revenge against a public officer, it can be considered an act of sedition. What else? To commit for any political or social end, an act of hate or revenge against any private persons or social class. Remember, these are acts. These are not speech. Okay? Acts. May ginawa. To despoil for any political or social end, any person, municipality, province, or national government, or any property thereof. Okay? So, when you despoil, ruin, etc., property of the national government or property of a local government, then that can be considered an act of sedition. Usually, what characterizes an act of sedition is its purpose, usually for a political or social end. Okay. Now, inciting to sedition is you don't actually commit those acts, but you get people to commit those acts through your words or through acts which encourage them to do that. So, any person who, without taking any direct part in the crime of sedition, incites others to the accomplishment of those acts. So again, it prevents the promulgation or execution of the law, any act of hate or revenge against a public officer or private person, prevent the national government or any of its officers from doing their duties, prevent the execution of an administrative order, ruin property belonging to the national or local government. Medyo mabigat, ha? Inciting to sedition, pag hinikayat nyo yung mga tao na mag-commit ng acts of sedition, kahit ikaw mismo, hindi ka nag-commit nun. Okay? What else? But it also includes by means of speech, proclamations, writings, emblems, cartoons, banners, other representations. Another act of inciting to sedition is you utter seditious words or speeches, you write, publish, or circulate scurrilous libels against the government of the Philippines or any of the duly constituted authorities, okay, which tend to obstruct or disturb any lawful officer from executing the functions of his office, tend to instigate others to cabal and meet together for unlawful purposes. Does this remind you of anybody we know? But local yan, ha? It can only, acts that are committed abroad are not punishable here. They have to be committed here. Or which suggest to incite rebellious conspiracies or riots, which tend to lead people to stir up the people, or words which tend to stir up people against lawful authorities or disturb the peace of the community, safety and order of the government. So, malaki yung scope of inciting to sedition. Okay? So, our concerns with those hate sites that were put up, we'll have to examine them closely if what they are saying in those hate sites, such as Silent No More, Pinoy blog, etc., we'll have to examine them carefully if they're inciting other people to commit sedition, inciting other people who they circulate scurrilous libels. Now, what are scurrilous libels? Yung paninira sa gobyerno or any of its duly constituted authorities. Okay? So, paninira sa gobyerno natin, pag sinabing, halimbawa, pag sinabing mamamatay tao, lahat ng tao dito sa gobyerno, and this speech tends to make other countries inflict violence on our OFWs or to plot against us, or to disturb our public order or peace, then this is inciting to sedition. Okay? Any speech, scurrilous libel, which tend to disturb or obstruct any lawful officer from doing his functions, from executing his office. Any speech which tends to instigate others to cabal, to meet together for unlawful purposes, or speech that suggests that people rise up in rebellion. Okay? Or incite rebellious conspiracies, or riots. Okay? So, ang laki, no? Daming pwede. So, lahat ng speech that tends to foment hate against this government or hates on this government, and that speech has a tendency to damage this government, that speech tends to, in other words, when you listen to the speech, you will want to rise up publicly against this government, incite you to cabal together, to meet together and plot against this government, then that is inciting to sedition. So, homework for all of us. Let's start looking at those hate sites and see if there is any inciting to sedition. If there's none, there is also false news, which tends to disrupt public order, public safety, security, and national interest, and that is punishable under Article 154. Okay, so for those of you who keep asking, hindi ba pwedeng kasuhan si ganito or si ganyan, you'll now have to look at what they are saying. Okay, so see if what they're saying is false news, and if that false news tends to be detrimental to the country, in other words, it affects our public order, that's Article 154. If what they wrote is like that. The oral speech that tends to rouse people into rebellion or prevents government officials from executing their functions, or prevents the execution of any administrative order, or which hates on the government and naninira sa gobyerno, scurrilous libels, remember? These are inciting to sedition. Okay, bakit nakangiti ako? Because I really think that there are some people who committed this. Seriously. Kaya natatawa ako. You know, I wasn't mentioning this before because the president has always been absolutely clear that he doesn't like to disturb the people's exercise of the freedom of speech, or even so that's why he's very open about rallies. Diba? Sige, gusto niyo mag-rally against the Marcos burial? 1 month, you're free to rally. Diba? And eventually it fizzled out. And then all of this, even rallies against martial law, sure, go ahead, rally. What the hell? Diba? That's our president. He is very open. He's very liberal. He has a tendency to allow people to exercise all of their basic freedoms. Okay? So, we will not, he does not encourage the filing of actions which tend to have what we call a chilling effect on speech. Unless that speech violates the law. And there are at least 2 provisions in the revised penal code that will punish the kind of speech that hates on the government. Diba? That hates on our president or prevents our president from executing his functions. So, diba? Time to examine now those hate sites. Please don't follow them or don't engage. Just examine them. Kasi with everything else, if you click like or follow or even make comments on these hate sites, you're contributing to their engagement and it encourages them. We don't want to encourage them. But we must examine what they say to see if they're violating the law. Okay? So stop saying that Trillanes is committing treason. You can say he's probably committing inciting to sedition. Okay? Wala nang ano. And please don't ask me anymore kung anong pwedeng kasuhan because we will examine all of the events naman. And, a lot of you are already repetitive and it's eating up a lot of time just trying to keep answering all of these questions. Pag hindi ko naman sinagot, nagagalit yung iba sa inyo. So, wala nang ganon ha. I will be masungit from now on about not answering questions. Not sedition necessarily inciting to sedition kasi yun yung speech. Okay? So, examine lang ha. Don't follow these blogs. Don't engage. Even if they say really nasty things about any of the DPS or about our president or any of the bloggers, press the ignore button. Ignore ha. What I mean is just ignore them. But examine them for possible violations of the law. Okay? And then, we will then start calling the attention of the DOJ and the NBI, and they can conduct their own investigation into it. We don't even have to file it. We just need to call the attention of our authorities to see if they have been committing a crime. If they're not, then it's okay. May inis lang tayo. That's why I'm saying is that don't always rely on the law to answer your political problems, our political problems. That's not how our president does it, because that is not the way we should be doing it. Okay? Sige. Kaya ako nakangiti kasi tingin ko meron talaga. Iniisip ko tuloy is, when people say 13,000 EJKs, is that something like inciting to sedition? Well, tignan natin, di ba? If you're using it in the context of a rally, ang dami na nilang pinatay, we should rise up against this president. Hello? Aha. Inciting to sedition or inciting to rebellion? Okay? So, from now on, we don't even have to get mad. We just have to be observant. Okay? And it's inciting with an I, not with an E. It's not inciting, it's inciting. I have a tendency to get really anal about these things. Okay, now let's see your questions. Buti malakas ang internet ngayon. Never you noticed there are no interruptions? Maraming salamat sa Globe. Pero today lang to. Okay. Guys, stop making mura ng mga ka-DDS. Stop cursing. Sabi ni Dwayne, I agree. We don't need to curse our enemies or our people we don't like. There are other ways of getting even. Diba? One of them is pag nilangaw yung blog ng isang hater, diba? Then, nothing. Diba? They're not talking to anybody. Ignore them. One of the things that these people desperately need, some of the things that these people really desperately and completely need is they have this need for attention. So if we suspect that some of these hate sites are being sponsored, they're not going to get paid if they have very little engagement. They are not going to get paid if they have very few followers. So don't give them what they want. But please observe, because if they are violating the law, then we are going to call the attention of the DOJ about it. Now, Cheryl Salipong says, but attorney, what about these tab plots and libels against the government or those things? Hindi ba sinabi ko nga inciting to sedition? No. Well, ganito yun, no? Okay, now let's talk about arrests. A lot of you are saying, oh, pa-aresto na yan si Trillanes. I'm sorry if he's always my example, pero yun yung pinaka-common sa inyo, parating si Sunny, So, pakulong na yan kasi he said this. It doesn't work that way. An arrest without a warrant can only be done when the person is in the act of committing a crime, or immediately before or immediately after. And we're talking hours or at the most a day. But immediately before, which means you catch him just, as he umuumang siya to commit a crime, or in the act of committing a crime, or immediately after, you can arrest without a warrant. Ngayon, if tapos na, nagawa na, na-report na sa dyaryo, you can't just arrest them, and please don't ask the president to do that because he will be violating the law. Okay, what will happen is that a complaint will be filed with the prosecutor's office, or the president can tell NBI investigate. NBI gathers the evidence, it files the case for preliminary investigation, and the DOJ will determine if there is probable cause. And in this case, the respondent is allowed to answer. When there is probable cause, then it goes to court, and then a warrant of arrest will be issued. Okay, so stop saying pa-aresto na yan. Doesn't work that way if they're not in the act of committing a crime or immediately before or immediately after. Okay, so stop getting mad at the president because he didn't arrest somebody. You have to investigate, get your evidence, file the case with the DOJ, get the finding of probable cause, and then file it in court where you can get a warrant. Okay, kayo na nagagalit kayo when the president doesn't do something, the fact is that he can't do that. Okay? So the president cannot use the PNP or the army to immediately arrest somebody, even if they're not in the act of committing a crime. Okay? So please, be patient. The president knows his law. Hannah Sabil says, attorney sa CHR about EC na violation ng sundalo against terrorists. Pwede ba i-abolish ang CHR? We can't abolish the CHR without amending the Constitution. The Commission on Human Rights is a body created by the Constitution. So in order to do that, we have to amend the Constitution. How about sa logic ni Hilbay? I think I already wrote about that. I think that's enough. You know, I'm not very fond of the former Solicitor General, but I'm also not going to get people to bully him. Stop. Let's not do that, okay? But we certainly can write and puncture holes in his arguments. Yes, be observant, inciting to sedition. Hi, attorney watching from Israel. Hi. How nice. I'm about to sleep. Just want to say hi, sabi ni Ria. On the metro, learning lessons from you. Oh, that's nice. Deej says, wala pong sumasabotay sa'yo ngayon. Well, at least we can be thankful that Globe seems to be working. Very informative. Tama, basahin lang, then ignore, wag mag-engage. Sabi ni Bernie, correct. Tien says, wag na lang sumagot. Rex Fernandez Olive says, love our enemies. Oh, I didn't say that. I can't possibly. I mean, can you imagine loving the person who runs Pinoy Ako blog? I mean, we can ignore. Hi, attorney, sabi ni Alra. Very insightful, powerful. Yeah, tama po, wag lang patola. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying wag patola all the time, ha? There will be a time when kailangan natin kuyugin, but not now. This is not the time. We only do that when it is very extreme need to defend our country and our president. And we have to do that very, very sparingly. Kasi it loses its force eh. Kung every time we feel that nasaktan ng konti, kaya naman ng Pangulo eh, natitiis naman niya. So until it is absolutely necessary, let us not do that. Let's not engage. Okay? We don't want any of them to benefit from us. Grace De Leon says, Attorney Tricks, what's Trillian is doing in the U.S. You know, I'd really love to know what that is too. He's been to the U.S. quite often. I'm not sure, but you know, it would be interesting to find out. So anybody who is in the U.S., please, if you have any sightings, yan yung gamit natin. If there are any sightings of the senator, then it would be a good idea to, one, find out where he's going. You don't have to follow him. You know, you can just take pictures of where he is. Baka mag-shopping yan. Attorney, pwede ba ma-overturn ang pardon ni Trillanes? No. Trillanes was not pardoned. He got amnesty. And amnesty is an act of Congress. And usually it is given, once it is given, you cannot take it back. Okay? It's one of those criminal law things. You can't revert. Okay, so can you please disabuse yourselves of the theory that we can still overturn his amnesty? No, we cannot and we should not. Why? Because hindi lang siya ang ginranta ng amnesty, marami po sila. So, madadamay sila. Okay? So, stop that. I know you don't like him, but let's do it the right way. Okay? Let's not hate on him just because he's hateful. Pag bumalik na lang si Trillanes, hindi ko nakita, biglang tumaas. What can you say on the rights for terrorists? Okay, you know what? Okay, that becomes ridiculous na, no? Rights for terrorists. Seriously, I think that's fake news. I don't think anybody has said that, you know, well, the idea is that everybody has rights and that everybody is entitled to due process. Yes, even terrorists. But in the heat of battle, there's no the only due process in the heat of battle is the rules of engagement, which are subject to the rules, to the rules on conflict in the Geneva Convention. Okay, what we call humanitarian laws. So Oh, this is mean. During wartime, for example, you don't bomb civilians. You don't go after civilians, you only go after the combatants. And that holds true now for any conflict, even if it's internal conflicts like ours. So, yung sa acts of terrorism naman, what is the paramount intention when there is violence? The paramount intention is to make the situation safe for everybody. So, if a person endangers the life of one or several people or an entire population, then during engagement you are well advised, as well as protected by the law, if you will kill that person. So it will depend on the exigency of the situation. Remember that one of the exempting circumstances is defense of stranger, defense of family, or your self-defense. So there are instances when you are allowed to use extreme violence, such as killing, when that person is an imminent threat to yourself or to anybody around you. Okay? What can you say about rights of terrorists, please? Terrorists, yes, they have rights because they're human, but not in the heat of battle. No. There is a reason why they get killed, because they present an imminent danger to the public as well as to the law enforcement agents. Hi, sa San Francisco, pa-define naman po ng destabilization. Okay, it's not a crime, ha? Destabilization is not a crime. But what it does is it presents a danger to public order. And when you present a danger to public order, then you can see if the act was speech. If it was speech, then it might be inciting to sedition. Or if it is written and published, then it might be unlawful publications. So, destab by itself is not a crime. Okay? Why are we concerned about destab? Because it presents a serious threat to national security. It means that destab usually is an artificial means. And when you use it, destab is an artificial means to create unrest. And sometimes this unrest is used as an impetus for overthrowing a government or causing an extreme change in government. That's why destab is a national security issue. Not a crime, a national security issue. Sino po in our history ang nag-guilty na sa sedition? Marami eh. Kasi during Marcos's time, that was one of those crimes, rebellion, sedition, inciting to sedition. So maraming nakulong during martial law for that. Joyce Colendrino says, can you comment on the silencing of Dr. Badoy on FB? You know, the Bill of Rights in the Constitution says you have freedom of speech. So the general rule, the provision says that no law shall be passed abridging the freedom of speech, expression, or of the press. So what you can see from the Constitution is that this prescription is directed at the government. In other words, Congress and the legislature, you can't create laws that will abridge the freedom of speech. So, when FB silences somebody else, FB, much as it feels like it, Facebook is not the state. So, Facebook is a private entity, and essentially we're all kind of renting space on it. So, they can impose rules, the way they want to, because tayong nakikigamit. It's like going into SM. But normally, a person is secure from unreasonable searches and seizures. But the stores claim the right to search your bags and all of that to prevent people from blowing up their store or people robbing their store. And that's allowed, even if the Constitution says you can't search without a warrant or under certain exceptions. The stores can do that because they're not the state. Okay. However, in relation to Dr. Badoy, clearly it wasn't just Facebook who was moving there. This what we call how do you call that? mass reporting of certain accounts, including mine this morning, which was down for about 3 hours, personal account, is, yes, it's an act of silencing, but it is done by another group, by a group that claims to uphold our freedoms and the Constitution and all that. People who are so pompous and say that, you have to respect human rights, etc., but they can't do that themselves. Hypocrisy alert. So, as to the silencing of Dr. Badoy, I am incensed, I am angry, and, ang sabi nila, bilog ang mundo. Revenge is a dish best served cold. I don't get angry, I get even. Ay, Attorney at Albert, pag binato mo si Trillanes, hindi ko nakita yun, nag-gabi po. Wait, let me see dun okay. Is there something the government can do with Trillanes? Will you please stop asking me that? You always ask me that and I always answer. Attorney, I'm confused on Trillanes' act right now. You're meeting with U.S. government officials. That's not illegal. Can he do that without informing the Senate President? Yes, he can, but he will have to inform the Senate President after he's met with them. Okay, he has to make a report because he went abroad. Now, can a senator meet with foreign officials? Yes, he can. We do that all the time. There's what we call interparliamentary courtesy. Lawmakers from all over the world, they get in touch with each other and they meet with each other. The reason you're all concerned is because Trillanes is known to, has made no secret of his desire to remove this president, so we're all worried. But these individual acts, they're not illegal, okay? So, don't say na anong pwedeng ikaso for meeting with government, with U.S. senators, nothing. Okay, and it's really starting to irritate me that you keep asking what case can be filed against Trillanes. We will file one. But only when there is evidence and only if there is an actual crime. Do you know what Trillanes does? You know what he and a lot of the opposition do? They accuse this government of violating rights. So if we will do that, if we file a case against them when they did not commit a crime, what do you think we're doing? Diba? Stop that. Seriously, you're making our president look bad. Don't do that. And you know what? If Senator Trillanes and a lot of these opposition figures, they're always in the news. And if I think that they committed a crime or what crime can be done, then we will evaluate his acts and we will discuss it on Facebook. But if you keep asking me what crime or what we can do to him or what charge we can do to them, it really is starting to get old with me. Sorry. Parang napangibit ka sa answer mo, attorney. Okay. It's like this, okay? I'm going to address the frustration that everybody feels. You're all frustrated and now you're looking to the law to answer your frustration or your need to take revenge or your need to put a certain person in its place. That's not what the law is for. The law is for public order. Okay? It's to keep things orderly, to keep to prescribe certain behaviors. Okay? If you want to get even, yes, of course, if they commit a crime, then that satisfies our need for revenge. Yes, I get that. But what if there is no crime? What if there is no law that punishes their act? What are we going to do? Just get frustrated? There are political solutions. Okay, one of the political solutions is, hello, let's not vote for them ever again. That's one. Make sure that people don't subscribe to it. You know why they get people to be able to vote for them? Because there are a lot of poor people who are just willing to vote either because of the promises that they make or, the 300 pesos that their vote will give them. What we need to do is start making sure that the poorest of the poor are going to start benefiting from this change in administration. Remember we talked about not leaving anybody behind. It's the people who feel that they have been left behind. They're the ones who become rebels. They're the ones who join actions against the government because they feel that they are not ever able to benefit from these administrations. And as long as there are people who are like that and we do not address them, if we're always focused on the people who are in the news and forget about our poor countrymen, then we are not helping. Okay. Any question po regarding Bautista's resignation. Sabi sa Karambola na hindi raw dapat. Hello, I gave my comments on Karambola. Jojo Robles read it out loud. But okay, let's discuss that. First, sabi ni Senator Lacson that COMELEC Chairman Andres Bautista tendered his resignation to the wrong person because he tendered it to the President. I disagree with that theory because largely it is a theory. Former COMELEC Chairman Ben Abalos submitted his resignation to the COMELEC. That is true. I would have disagreed with that one. Why? But several reasons. What is the difference? The Commission on Elections is a government agency and it's part of the civil service. Okay, all of its employees are still subject to civil service rules and civil service standards. The only difference being that the COMELEC commissioners cannot be removed under the usual rules on civil service, under the usual rules on public service. The Constitution is very clear that they can be removed only through impeachment, but everything else holds. The President is the head of the civil service and therefore ultimately the authority on that. The only thing that the President does not have a hold on the commissioners is their tenure in office. He cannot cut off their tenures. He cannot fire them. They can only be removed through impeachment. Other than that, they're still part of the civil service. So symbolically, the resignation, I feel, should be made to the President. The Commission on Elections is not an independent body in the sense that it is separate from government. It is still part of the civil service. That's my theory. And both Senator Lacson's and mine, my views on that are both theories. There's been no case, so there's nothing to settle the issue. That's the way things stand now. Feeling ko, sabi ni Dij, yung move ni Trillanes para matabunan yung mga cases sa impeachment kay Sereno, iniiba nila yung issue. You know, we really also have to stop thinking that way. You know why a newspaper has several pages? It's because the human mind is capable of paying attention to several things. So, yung nililihis yung issue, mga kakalimutan, once a case is filed, it just loses public attention, but the judicial process or the legal process will still continue. Yes, there is an advantage to the attendance or the attention that is being paid to it, but there are also safeguards against that. Every day, thousands of cases are filed and go through the judicial system without the benefit of any public attention. And in general, justice is gained. So, the attention of the people is not an essential requisite for getting justice. At least I don't think so. So, yung theories na nililihis lang yung attention, you know, they can only do that for so long, right? And also, because of the internet, there is nothing that can be forgotten now. Dalia or Nopia says, I've been frustrated for 2 days now, but when I heard your explanation, I feel better. Good, because, you know, we have to get angry at the right things. Because we're going to need that anger. We're going to need that passion when it comes to down the line, when the President is going to really need our defense for him. Baka mapagod kayo eh. Baka mapagod tayo if we get mad at everything. A very good friend of mine, an excellent military strategist told me, do not stop at every barking dog. What does that mean? It means that when you're on a mission, you don't inspect every little thing. You don't stop and make an issue out of every little thing. Focus. First, let's focus on what the good this administration has done, di ba? Remember the other day I posted, and it had an amazing response. I posted a list of all the good news. Diba? So, and it makes us feel better. You know why? Because no matter what these other people say, the President just keeps going on. And that's what also we should be doing. We just have to keep going on. Save your anger and frustration for the bigger issues. For instance, I would prefer that we we deluge the sites of the New York Times and BBC News because clearly they have not been presenting balanced views about our country or our president. So if you're going to get frustrated, those people probably deserve that kind of engagement. We need to be heard. But we don't need to pick a fight with everybody who disagrees with us. Okay? Unless, you're having fun. You know how Mark Lopez just keeps poking fun at every person who he turns them into really ridiculous people, and that is okay. That's okay. Right? When you guys joke on my wall and we laugh about something, that is also okay. What's not okay is if you keep asking me kung anong pwedeng ikaso kay Trillanes. I'm really, really sick of that question, seriously. Good PM, Attorney T. About heritage, what can you say about Taliano Gold? What are the heritage sites? Okay, if that is Marcos Gold, there is no documentation yet. So we will have to see. Former president was very, very good at myth making. When he was running for president, like a year before that, he knew he was going to run for president. A movie came out called Iginuhit ng Tadhana. I don't know if anybody is old enough to remember this. I wasn't born yet. But it's there, it's in history, and Imelda Marcos was played by Gloria Romero, and the former President Marcos was played, if I'm not mistaken, by Luis Gonzalez. And it was so effective. It was, of course, highly embellished, but it worked. Okay? President Marcos was really, really good at spinning myths. And the job of historians now is to determine which parts of his life and his stories are myth and which parts are true. And remember, it doesn't detract from him if they are not true. It also speaks well of him that he was able to do this. He was a great spinner of tales, knew how to use history, knew very well how to use heritage, and I have to respect him for that. So never underestimate his brilliance in political strategy. And part of that political strategy was to spin mythology about himself. So be careful about which stories we believe. We will believe the ones that are supported. Is it illegal po na murahin ko si Trillanes in person o ibu namin siya? No, booing him is perfectly acceptable. Yes, you can boo him. Murahin. Now that one is sticky. You don't want to look like you're aggressively attacking him, verbally attacking him. Although putang ina, the Supreme Court has ruled on that in 1968 that it is not something you can sue on. It's not considered a swear word anymore. So you can go by that. I don't encourage it, but booing is perfectly acceptable. So for instance, he's walking through the crowd, everybody starts saying boo. Do not commit any aggressive physical acts. Okay? Don't do that. You will get tackled by Senate security, and if you keep going, you might get shot. So please do not ever, ever, ever commit any physical acts of aggression. But booing is acceptable. Annalyn Pakatang says, I ignore Trillanes dahil di ko siya ka-level. You're right. You're so much better. Ricardo Manukot says, hi, attorney, you're so sweet. I am? No, I'm Ilias. Okay. For those who haven't shared yet, I think it's really, really time for you to start sharing. Seriously. And for those who haven't followed the page, I posted treason and inciting to sedition on the page prior to doing a live so that I would be assured at least that most of the people would have read what I posted so that the discussions would be easier. So if you haven't followed the page yet, please go ahead and do so, and it's really, really, really easier if you do that. You also get notices kasi of when I'm live. Please subscribe to the live videos. You can do that on the video itself later on. Hanig says, iba yung aura ninyo ngayon. Why? What's different? What happened? Andre Nicolas says, trolls are meant to be ignored like Pab, Madam Claudia, SMMPH, etc. Lalo na si Italianes. Kaya mga ka-DTS, huwag yung pansinin yung mga yan. Tignan ninyo si Reza, etc. Yes, but it's okay to post about them, and it's okay to be angry about them on your walls and all that. Just make sure that there's no scurrilous libels, huh? But it's also, you can also make fun of them. One of the best ways to cope is humor. So if you're really frustrated, look at what how Mark Lopez does it. He's really, really funny. If you haven't followed him yet, please go ahead and do so. He's incredibly funny. And yeah, if you like English, Franco Mabanta can get riotous also sometimes. As a matter of fact, Facebook allegedly took down that post he made about if the world were going to burn down, and this person, he had to kiss this person whom he doesn't like, and whom we all know who this is, and he said that he'd rather watch the world burn. Okay, Facebook took that down. I don't know how that violates community standards, but I think it was worth it. Hi, attorney. Actually, it's hard to ignore them because if an anti-government friend likes or engages on the hate site, it still flows into our feed, so we get triggered always. I think, sometimes I have a suspicion that they're really trying to trigger us. You know why? Okay, I'll explain. I was interviewed by the BBC a couple of days ago. I was so frustrated because they didn't really want to hear our side of it. I was supposed to be interviewed regarding Jover Laura and Pinoy ako blog, but they really didn't want to talk about that. They wanted to talk about us, people on Facebook, about our, they wanted to talk about trolls who attack critics of the government. Can you imagine that? I said, no, these people, we don't do that. Okay, we don't attack. If anybody, the prominent bloggers have been the ones who have been targeted by these trolls, and these trolls are in the opposition. We need to present a balance. I wanted to present a balanced view, but they really didn't care. So the problem now is that we're suffering from this sort of reputation that we seem to be attacking the critics of government when in fact they're the ones attacking us. So what would happen now if we stop attacking them and just let them go on the offensive? Now we have proof that we're not the ones. Yeah. Don't get triggered, because I think sometimes they really intend to trigger us to look bad, or to look bad on the president. You know what they're trying to project? That we have a madman for a president with 16 million fanatics. And this is not the face of a fanatic. This is the face of somebody who doesn't care what's said about her. Archer Lalawa says, history is written by the victors. They put Aquino onto a pedestal. Okay, that saying, that history was written by the victors, is a saying that goes back to the medieval ages. You know why? In the medieval ages, the only people who knew how to write was the aristocracy. Education wasn't a big thing among peasants. By choice. Okay? So, those who were educated were usually, the aristocracy, and the aristocracy would usually survive. Meaning, kings, heads of state, members of the court, the royal court. So, if they won, then they wrote the history praising the king. But in modern days, history is no longer written by just the victor. What the problem really is that we have a National Historical Commission, which determines which is historical fact, which is acceptable historical fact. The problem with this kind of institutional support is that there's a lag in recognizing that history can be written by anybody now, not just by the victors. Why? Because everybody can publish a book. Everybody can write now. It's not limited in only, even the people who have lost can write the books. What appears in history? Really, who determines what history is? In this country, we have an NHCP. But that doesn't mean that the alternatives cannot be presented. So, the reason we are even questioning the Aquinos right now is precisely because We are capable of doing research now. We're capable of writing history again. But you know what the main problem is that we can see the problem, but nobody's doing the right thing. So let's see. A lot of prominent historians are probably on the ball already, even as we speak. Ano yung aura ko ngayon? Sabi ni Sandy Torres, napansin ko rin yung aura ninyo blooming. Oh, wow. No, it's the phone. Maganda yung phone ko. So, sabi ko na-miss. Lordwin Garcia says, Attorney Trix, I like the way you are blooming nyo ngayon. Dati po ayaw ko sa inyo kasi pinagtatanggol niya ni Fallen Angels. Tapos na po tayo dyan, pinagbigyan niyo na ako. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Lordwin. I really appreciate what you said. Yung dun sa amin na lang yon, yung kwento na yun. Pero Lordwin, I hope you understand. I already met with some people at mukhang pinagbigyan na rin ako. Rod Castillo says, off topic, attorney, I'd love to watch you cross-examine Jover. Is it going to be you? No. I'm not Sasa's lawyer, but I know who is. So, God Domingo says, hi attorney, if you get to suggest on added laws for hazing, what are your suggestions para gawing may pangil ang batas natin? Oy, I disagree na walang pangil kasi there's a prison term so yun yung pangil, yun yung kagat. What the problem I think is parang maraming loopholes. So I think that the Supreme Court, if it sees the loopholes and if they can judicially do it, they will probably shut down the loophole. Let's not forget that the Supreme Court can interpret the law to shut those loopholes, and if it doesn't, then it's time for additional legislation to make, let's say, the schools liable if they know that there's a fraternity but it has not been accredited, diba? Like what is going on here. Just for everybody to be reminded, the fraternity in question in UST, its dean claims that it was not accredited and therefore they were not obligated to get permits or to be present at the initiation rites. I think that's I think that the court might also see that there was an informal recognition of the fraternity by the mere fact that it was appearing on the UST's on the school or the college's website. So, Kiko Salvante says, attorney, do you agree with the death penalty? Because he does. Personally, I don't. You know why? It's harder to live. It is so much harder to live in prison. Not kidding. For those who say, papakainin pa natin sila, do you know how much the state spends on each prisoner? How much per day they get an allocation for? It's not much. Really, seriously. That's why it was so easy for a certain prominent senator to have gotten inside the prison system and used it as a form of generating funds, because people there are desperate to do anything. It's harder, very much harder to live. I'm serious. That's why I disagree with the death penalty. It's way too easy. For me, one of the most heinous punishments is for you to live with your crime, live with the guilt of your crime. If you're never punished, if you're punished for it, you're in jail. I don't know if you've seen. I used to go to the jails a lot, and to see the conditions. It's not heaven, seriously. This is Michelle Gallanera says, this is such an ironic time in the Philippines, the opposition doing things and throwing it to us, PRRD defense. But sorry to say what they did to Marcos. Well, it's not gonna happen again. Yeah, over my dead body, diba? Kiko Salvante says, privatizing the prison system. I don't know if it will work here. Some things are the obligation of the state. The entire world actually is moving towards what we call socialism, where it is the government that takes over the public utilities. I agree with that. So things like the prison system, transportation systems, I prefer that they are run by government. NJ De Vera says, how about foreigners attending political rallies? Are they legally allowed to do that? No, they're not. They're not allowed to do that. They can be deported for that. That's interference. Josh Pastor says, hi, attorney, out of topic. There's somebody during your meeting with PRRD that suggested someone should write a book about PRRD. That was me. No, but actually what I said was this. Mr. President, there's so much that is being said that's ugly out there. And the traditional media says it a lot. And the sources for writing history are usually the traditional media because that media survives. You know, there reels of film. There's newspapers that are archived, but what is said online is ephemeral largely. What I say on Facebook now, were it not for the On This Day app, I wouldn't know what I said 5 years ago. And because it's ephemeral, they might not be used as sources for writing the president's history later on. People might not see how well loved he is. People might start believing 30 years from now, 50 years from now, this was a tyrant. He's not. So I said that somebody has to be tailing you around, documenting what your day is like, what you were like, and for that to survive, and you know, for a lot of this to be published and a lot of it taken up and a lot of people writing about you, writing in materials that will be archived and that will survive, because I'm really, really worried about what future generations are going to say about him. Mary Joy Soon says, Teresa Castillo says, I'm sorry, you'll have to repeat that. Mary Joy Soon says, according to the Bible, I'm sorry, again, nawala. God Domingo says, what are Sasa's chances on getting justice? Okay, the one thing that you should never ask me is what are the chances for winning or losing a particular court case. We can only determine that based on the evidence that is already there, and usually a judge is better equipped for that. When you ask what are the chances, that means you're betting, and I'm not going to bet on a court case, ever. You know why? Because there are a lot of reasons for certain decisions. In fact, there was a time, remember, that the late Senator Miriam Santiago says, a lot of the times the judges don't make decisions simply based on law, but also based on experience. So it's human nature. If this person has a certain experience, let's say when he was a kid somebody stole something from him and he was never able to get it back, then he or she might be harder on criminals that stand before their sala for robbery. So experience of the judge plays a great role in that. NJ says, is BI taking notice of such foreigners? It should be. Kila Nev says, when I'm triggered, I write a comment to rebut what was said by the trolls, but I don't click the send button. Good choice. Arlie Asuncion says, attorney, hypothetical lang, paano kung corrupt or papo? Then, si P. Duterte, anong gagawin mo? We'll get to that when it happens. But, you know, I've been somebody I've always been on the outside. This is the first time I've actually liked the president since I was a kid. So, Lee Sankey says, hi, Attorney Chicks, totally off topic, but I want to hear from a professional like you, your point of view regarding universities and colleges imposing educational tours on students, which is a burden to parents like me. Grabe po sa kamahal. Can DepEd do something about those issues? I disagree. I agree with field trips, always and constantly, but I disagree with field trips to malls and TV shows. It depends on what it is. I prefer field trips to the National Museum and places like that, because there's really no substitute for experiential learning. I understand that it's very difficult because it's expensive, but our kids really should go to things like Mind Museum. Have you taken your kids to the Mind Museum? You have to. So, There's no substitute for it. There's stuff that your kids are not going to learn in the classrooms. And a lot of parents can't do that, which is why they rely on schools to do it. And I'm speaking as somebody who taught in university for 2 years. Kits de la Cruz says, Ma'am, what can you say sa ginawa ni Trillanes? Pass. Next. Igmedio Cortez says, can Tatay Digong declare a revolutionary government without consultation from Congress or the Senate? To have a revolutionary government, there has to be a revolution. A revolution doesn't require a consultation. Attorney NJ said, NJ, kanina ka pa, bakit parati ka natatapat sa mata ko? Enlighten about the hazing culture. I discussed this in a previous live. The hazing culture, the hazing rite is actually a rite of bonding. But bonding can be done without pain. Because that's why we study history. That's a form of shared experience. And it is shared experience that creates the bonding experience. So you can bond over, when you're stranded in an airport and you strike up a conversation with a random stranger, that can be a bonding experience. Lloydwin says, again, sana di po kayo magbabago sa pagsuporta kay Tatay Digong. Why would that happen? We need your support para lumakas loob ng sambayang Pilipino. I'm not going anywhere. Sandy says, tama po yan, the opposition will turn heaven and earth just to outsmart the supporters of the administration. Focus on big issues. Jover Lauria, for instance, is just a tip of what's buried underneath. Sandy is correct. The real issue isn't Jover, it's the people who are funding her. Attorney Trix and the rest of them, etc., is exerting every effort of information. Yes, we will keep doing that. Mark Anthony says, about heritage. I remember your discussion in heritage. There should be, I missed that. Could you please repeat your question? Just please post it again. Andre Nicolas, I'm sorry, attorney, please tayo. Yeah, kakasawa talaga. Please don't talk to me about what we can do about Trillanes. I assure you that if there's something that I can do, I will do it. Okay? Anything else? And also, please be assured that if the president can do something about it, he will, except that if it will violate any rights. Teresa Castillo says, your contribution in sharing knowledge and educating the public is an invaluable service to the Filipino people. May we continue to learn. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that you appreciate that. And so on. Hi, Chito. You're watching from Fort Wayne. Almira Herrera says, hi, Attorney, was it okay to meet with a foreign political figure and discuss about the country's affairs? Yes, it is legal. Trillanes is not even chairman of foreign relations. Yes, but it doesn't stop him from talking to other people. Really. But you can examine who he was talking to. Because on its face, he's not doing anything illegal. But we are put on guard as to what possible actions he can be taking later on. Which is why reserve your galet for later on when we catch him plotting. This is an element, okay, by itself, taken by itself, a meeting with the U.S. senators can be innocuous. It can be, can be nothing. Unless he does something else. And that's what we have to watch out for, okay? Kiko Salvante says, your take on foreign policy, which one? Clarky says, Attorney, God bless you, and thank you for representing the entire nation. Oh, I'm not representing the entire nation. Just me. Rugs Makarag says, Attorney, can you comment about fake pic use ng ABS-CBN sa visit ni President sa jail? Can it count as unlawful publications? False news, if it affects the public interest, public safety, or public order, yeah, it can be under Article 154. Find out if, what effect did it have. Aldo Swarovski says, Attorney, I've been to Maguindanao last month as a volunteer for charity. Noticed people there didn't know how to write their names, let alone do a signature. Asked them how they voted, and they did. Mind you, most of them if they voted, most of them don't have TV. Lenny Wonder, your thoughts on this? Circumstantial. Let me tell you about some of the communities in Mindanao. They're very patriarchal, and they will usually vote for whom the patriarch instructs them to. That's really the way they're built. It's really their culture. So we either have to give them more information, or we take that into consideration when it comes to elections. Some communities have not adjusted well to the electoral system, and it isn't fair to expect them to do that. Some cultures are not built for it. Remember, you also have to understand that we are a multicultural society. And what do I mean by that? It means that, you know how, this true story. I have a friend who still lives in the province, and the province isn't that far away from Metro Manila. So he cooked, he was home in the province, and he decided to slaughter chicken, and he started cooking. And the neighbor sent over a plate and said, "Lagyan niya na lang, daanan ko mamaya." So, it still happens. That's the communal nature. Ito na yung history lesson. Ito na yung cultural lesson. That's the communal nature of the Filipino. It's true in any part of the country. I have a friend who acquired a house on the beach in her own hometown, and her aunts and second cousins all came over and said, "Oh, lalagay ko yung bahay ko dito. O, dito yung bahay ko. Dito yung bahay ko." So, wait, what? No. Not the title. It's titled in my name. Some people still don't even get the concept of a torrent system, of land titles. They think that, okay, my relative owns that, therefore, by extension, I own that too. And I can use that too. Again, this is the communal nature of Philippine culture, and this goes across a lot of our communities. Why is this important? When discussing civil discipline, when discussing laws, you will also have to take into consideration that some of our people have not completely adapted to this Western system, even 100 years after the Americans have been here, first imposed it. That is the power of culture. And that's why I am saying that our legal system has to adhere to the culture, and not our culture adhere to a foreign system. Okay? Diba, yung things like utang, it's really, really hard to get your money back, especially when you lend it out to relatives. That's a very, very common problem, and the courts are quite clogged with these, and there are a lot of people who don't even bother. So this is what I'm saying, is that in order for us to make laws that are enforceable, we must know our people. We must know our culture and understand the Filipino mentality, or the mentality of people all over the country. Okay? Laws on corruption, you know why it's so hard? Because gift giving is an inherent part of our culture. We like to show appreciation. We like to feed people. And sometimes, in doing so, we may be committing acts of petty corruption. And our laws are very strict. Our laws allow for reasonable gifts given on occasions of great rejoicing, or, maybe tips, maybe something. But we are generous people. We give a lot. So, what do we do? Diba? What do we do? How do we view corruption? Is corruption something that we can solve, or is it something solved in the present manner, the way our laws are constructed? Or should we start taking some things into consideration, some things that we will not be able to change because they're part of our culture? The reason we think that we fail is because we haven't studied our culture, and our standards are Western standards. Yeah. Sidewalks, for instance. You'll notice that people like to sell on sidewalks a lot. And there's no room for people to walk. And most of the time, pedestrians don't care. Or, it's sometimes just more convenient to have people on sidewalks. But why are people on their sidewalks? Because of this communal belief that it belongs to everybody. Okay, it belongs to everybody. I'll put up my stall here. You know that even barangays violate the sidewalks? They build barangay halls on sidewalks. Where do you see that? Okay. Some things need to be examined in the light of our culture. And that may be a good place to end this Facebook Live. There's nothing wrong with us. There's something wrong with the way we approach our problems, because we have been told that the Western system is the only system to go. Our communities have been solving disputes for generations. They can do it communally by calling everybody together and bringing the two factions together so they can talk. There are communities who still practice banishing. Okay, there are different ways. We don't have to have laws like they have in the US or in Europe. We can have laws that are own and reflect our own culture. And I think that there's some agencies that are so resistant. The Bureau of Customs comes to mind, that are so resistant to our laws, to our anti-corruption laws, because we're just forcing it. Well, maybe it's time to examine it. Maybe it's time to start thinking, how do we think? And then create laws that will make sure that everything is orderly anyway. Okay. But while we still have our laws, we are obliged to obey them. Okay? So until that changes, then you need to be careful. You need to know what you can and what you cannot do. And, let's have fun while doing it. Let's see if Senator Trillanes has been doing anything wrong. And please don't ask me again. I will tell you when he does something wrong. Okay? Good night, and thank you very much. A lot of your questions are really interesting this time. I really apologize for those whose questions I wasn't able to read, but I promise to do so next time. It's really late. Good night, everybody. Thank you for staying up with me. Para na tayong si Kuya Germs, no? Walang tulugan. See you. I won't have a Facebook Live on Saturday because I will be interviewed on Metro Sabado on TV5. If you want to catch it, it's at 10 o'clock. I will see you then. Good night. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to follow.